Hey guys, welcome into another YouTube video. Today's video is going to be about increasing efficiency when GPU mining. The first topic we're going to start off with is just buying the most efficient cards and models of cards, which is obviously like the main thing, like it's the most obvious thing. If you buy LHR 3060s, you're not going to be efficient on Ethereum. So these two GPUs that I have up here, well, in the photos of them, I have ASRock 6600, which is extremely efficient on ETH and Raven and Flux, and then the XFX 6600 XT, which is extremely efficient on ETH, Raven, and not quite as much on Flux. Also the 6800 and 800 XT, both XFX and 66 Challenger. Sorry. Yeah, both models, XFX and ASRock Challenger. Yeah, they're both good for those. But then, as a quick side note, the XFX 6600 is not as great. It uses 2 watts more per card than the ASRock Challenger does. This is only considered, these two cards I'm only considering ETH, Raven, and Flux. Yeah, ETH, Raven, and Flux are great on the 6600s in terms of efficiency. Obviously they're extremely low mega hash. And the 6600 XT is only really ETH and Raven. Same with the 6800 and 800 XT. ETH, Raven, not so much Flux. Yeah. The 6600 is the more efficient than any of the other 6000 series that are on Flux, and also more efficient than any of the 30 series on Flux. But if you're extremely bullish on Flux and you want the most efficient GPU on Flux, you'd probably be going for a 2080 Ti or something similar to that, because they are more efficient, despite being older, and they're also way more hash rate and cheaper because they're older. Basically, you want to find out which coin you're most bullish on for having like the highest profitability after ETH, and then buy the most efficient card for that coin, whatever that is, whatever coin you choose. Next up is the rating on the PSU. So titanium is the highest. We have the chart here, so 80 plus standard, bronze, silver, gold, titanium, platinum, then titanium. So titanium's the best. Up in the top left corner we've got a photo of a 1600 watt titanium EVGA PSU. That is pretty much the only decent titanium PSU you can get in New Zealand, which is where I am. You might have access to some other good ones in whatever country you're in. But yeah, if you look at the price, that is outrageous. New Zealand dollars are about 1.4 New Zealand dollars to a US dollar, so you can convert these prices if you want, but that's way too much money. In the bottom right, I've got a platinum PSU. That's the cheapest platinum PSU that you can get that still has enough PCIe cables, or 8-pin cables. So that one's got 4 8-pin cables, which is like the minimum you need to have on a PSU in order to do mining with it. Yeah, for the cards that I use, the low power cards, anything that draws under like 80 watts when mining, you can put 2 cards onto one power supply. Onto one 8-pin cable. So they would have, if they've got 4 8-pin cables, then they can have 8 GPUs on one of those power supplies. Obviously it has to be drawing less than a certain amount of power in order to not go over the 80% rule, but yeah, do all the math before you connect everything up. And then the biggest one in the center, the 1300 watt platinum power supply by EVGA, that is the most cheapest per watt platinum power supply that is available in New Zealand. So still an outrageous amount of money, but a little bit better, I guess. Got a whole bunch of 8-pin cables, 1300 watts, quite a lot. You can put quite a few GPUs on that. Yeah. So if we look down the on this table, you can see there's 10% load, 20% load, 50% load, and 100% load. We're never going to be using 100% load. We're probably usually going to be between 50 and 80%. So looking at the 50% column, you can see that in 80 plus gold, you do not want to go any lower than an 80 plus gold. They're just like the minimum standard. They are 90% at 50% load, and they drop to 87 by 100%. So you're going to be between like 88 and 90% no matter what load you're at. Like realistically, we're going to be using a load that's between those regions. And then 92% for a platinum and 94% for a titanium. So realistically, considering for like half the price of the cheapest power supply here in the bottom right hand corner, this power supply here, for half the price you can get a power supply the same size that's in 80 plus gold. Honestly, like, you'd be more efficient to go for one of these or one of these titanium ones, but like the cost, it just doesn't match up. It's like a 2% reduction in power on what's going through there, but man, it'll take so many years for that saving to increase how much you're paying for the PSU. So personally, while this would increase my efficiency, I'm not going to do it because 80 plus gold is just so much cheaper. Next efficiency method that you can do is to use a RISERLESS motherboard. A few different options, and you might be asking, like, or thinking, why is it more efficient? Well, risers use power, very small amount. I think it's only like 2 watts or so per riser, barely noticeable. I have only just noticed it because I do very like accurate testing on my GPUs, and they're quite low power GPUs, so I just happened to notice it while I was doing my testing. They do use a bit of power, around 2 watts. So yeah, if you use a RISERLESS motherboard, which I was using for my testing, then you get slightly more efficient cards because they're using around 2 watts less per card because they're not powering the riser as well. I currently have this motherboard in the top left, which is a RISERLESS 8 GPU motherboard, super cheap, and it's built-in CPU, so super cheap again. Not having to pay extra for a CPU. We've got this top right motherboard, which is pretty much the exact same but with larger spacings. So yeah, that's better for bigger cards, some cards that just won't fit on the smaller one. It also doesn't have a motherboard slot, motherboard power slot like this one here. Doesn't have one, so you can power this all with a server PSU if you want to, although server PSUs are less efficient than 80 plus gold power supplies. Next, these 2 bottom ones are 2 different versions of a 12 GPU RISERLESS motherboard. So these would be even more efficient because when you consider like the system idle is usually around 20 watts on a motherboard. So if you split that 20 watts up between 8 cards, it's going to be just over 2 watts. If you split that up, or 2.5 watts, if you split that 20 watts between 12 cards, then it's going to be less than 2 watts, so more efficient overall. But yeah, I'd like to get my hands on a 12 card RISERLESS motherboard, but then the same thing I was saying before, like the cost of those titanium PSUs, it's the same thing with these motherboards. Cheapest I can find a 12 GPU motherboard's like $400 to $600. in New Zealand dollar currency. Most of them were like 600 plus. Top left motherboard here costs like 200, maybe 220, so a lot cheaper, and for that reason I'll probably never buy a RISERLESS 12 GPU motherboard, although it would technically probably be more efficient. This one down here is actually in the bottom right. It's got a standard motherboard, like a mining motherboard, and then it's got a little adapter on the end to plug into like I don't even know what you'd call this, just an add-in board that has another 10 slots for PCIe slots, and then there's another 2 already on the board, so 12 in total, and then this one is just completely built in one piece. Next up, using 50% load on the PSU, pretty self-explanatory. The PSUs are most efficient at 50%, so run them at 50%. I've got a rig that does 405 watts, so the most efficient I could be is running an 850 watt power supply. Well, sorry, 810 technically, but that's not a size of a power supply, so round it up to 850. Also, if you run them at 50%, when you're mining like Ethereum, then you're allowing yourself that headroom for after ETH moves to proof of stake and you want to move on to whatever the next coin is. It might be a more power using algorithm, like a higher power draw, so like Raven or something uses a lot more power, in which case if you're running at 50% load, you've got another 30%, so you can increase how much the GPUs are using by, what's that, 60% before you have any problems in terms of the power supplies. So another good factor there. Remove fans if you can. These two photos are just photos of rigs that of mine. So the one on the left is 6600s. They don't get hot at all. Like, they're super cool, especially the triple fans, and the MSI card, the mech on the end, is insanely cold. Sorry, not triple fan, they're all dual fan. But the longer cards, the ones on the left, they are very cool, the ASRock Challengers. The hottest one is the power color, which gets really hot on the memory. It doesn't have a backplate. Yeah, none of those cards would have any problems running without any rig fans, even in the middle of summer. Rig fans use a minimum of about 5 watts just for like a cheap fan, so if you're not running an extra 5 watts per card, you're obviously saving a lot of power. Pretty much with most NVIDIA cards, you're going to have like some sort of rig fan pointing straight at them. Like, most people build their rigs with almost one fan per card, just to keep the airflow up. Obviously you're adding extra wattage to your efficiency rating. Like, you should be noting down like how much power that's drawing, and then it just decreases your efficiency overall. Again, on the right, no fans on that rig either. That one's got 6700 XTs, 6600 XTs, and a 6800. None of them require fans. All AMD cards. Did not include the photo of my NVIDIA rig because it's got a lot of fans on it. It's something else. It's got some server fans, got some 90mm high CFM fans, and also just regular old AliExpress cheap fans for some of the cooler cards. Probably got another. I've got a Cooler Master fan in there as well for cards that need a little bit more power than the AliExpress fans had to offer. It's a real. It's a mix on that one. Yeah. So other points for the fans. So if you enable auto fans, set a safe temperature, something like 50 on the core, 70 on the mem. For AMD cards, for NVIDIA cards, probably 55 on the core and 90 on the mem. And then the second part to that is like reducing your ambient temps and opening windows and stuff. Obviously, if you're setting up like a venting system, then you're decreasing your efficiency again because you're running a fan. Like I have a 200 mil like inline fan. It uses 75 watts, so I'm using an additional 75 watts if I turn that on. So it would reduce ambient temps, but I'd rather use non-power consuming methods such as opening a door or a window, which is what I do at my house. I just got all the mining rigs in the garage. You can even see a car in there, it's definitely in the garage there. So yeah, opening the main garage door just like a few centimeters, just depending how hot it is. I just leave it open, usually just not enough for anyone to be able to get in, and then I open the windows down the other end of the house and it creates airflow through the whole house and dissipates the heat. In the winter, a little bit different. I just open the internal door, and then instead of all the heat building up in the garage, it just goes throughout the whole house, so free heat. And last point for this is doing thermal mods. So you can add like tiny little heat sinks to the back of the back plates and stuff if you've got hot memory, or if you've got an exposed back plate. Like I have a 6600 and 6600 XT. It's this card here, 6600 XT, and this power color here. They both have exposed back plates, so you can chuck in a thermal pad on the back of the memory, and even just that by itself will increase thermal dissipation, thus reducing the temperature of the memory. But you can also put like something on top of that, a heatsink, some sort of aluminium heatsink preferably, because it's not electrically conductive, but it is thermally conductive. Yeah, so various things you can do with that, but probably only worth doing it if you're having a problem with temps, because again, you're going to be spending money. You're going to spend probably like at least $10 for a small heatsink. So I mean, you're not going to save that on the power that it saves, The only place I've actually used those little heat sinks that I'm talking about is on a 3080 to reduce the mem temps on an Asus TUF 3080 full hash rate. Next up is BIOS mod. So if you have a card like a 5700 XT or a 5600 XT, you can do a BIOS mod. I've never actually done it. I've also only ever seen this once, but I'm fairly certain there's one person out there who has done a BIOS mod on a 6600 to get it down an additional 5 or 6 watts or something, which is actually huge for a card that runs so low anyway. I believe he had them at was it 40 to 42 watts. So if we 28.9 megahash on ETH at 41 watts measured from the wall, he was at 0.7 megahash per watt efficiency, which is insane. I get them. My ASRock Challenges does 46.5 watts for the same megahash, which is a 0.6215 megahash per watt efficiency, which is already insanely good. So yeah, if you know how to do that BIOS mod to somehow get the 6600s down that low, I've seen the photos, like I've seen proof of it. So I'm fairly certain that it is for real. I know the person does have like a wall meter, and I've seen the screenshots of it saying it claims 30 watts in the software, where my GPUs claim 35 to 38, so kind of in line where the software power draw should be. So I'm hoping to one day figure out how to do that BIOS mod, but the guy wasn't forthcoming with the information yet, so we'll see about that. Yeah, this is my most efficient rig. Does 233.2 mega hash roughly for 405 watts. So yeah, really efficient Ethereum mining rig, Raven coin mining rig, and Flux mining rig. I'm going to do the numbers for all of them and repost it and everything, but yeah, super efficient on those three algorithms, even though it is very low mega hash. But yeah, I'm trying to do everything I can to make this rig as efficient as possible, but I'm also not going to go so far as paying like ridiculous amounts of money for like a power supply that's titanium rated or even platinum rated. It just doesn't financially make sense. So yeah, just gonna leave it as is for now. But yeah, really like this rig, my favorite rig. Yeah, thanks for watching this video, and leave a like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel, and have a great day. See ya.